Hello everybody and welcome back to Julie's Orchids. So we have some interesting things sitting on the table today, and some of you might be thinking, that looks like a phragmipedium, that would be, and that looks like a bunch of inorganic media, and that would be what that is. So I have decided to try to start transitioning to inorganic media instead of organic media. And there is reasons for that. So part of the reason is because of COVID and other things, there's been some supply chain issues, which means getting orchid bark is getting a bit expensive and a bit difficult. And the last several bags of bark I have purchased has been crumbly and nearly rotten and not in good shape. And this is one of the plants planted in the last set of bags I've gotten. Now, nothing against the local orchid nursery where I buy the product. It's not their fault, but it's getting pretty disheartening. And I'm finding that even on plants that aren't in a self-watering sort of organic setup, that the media that I'm buying from them is so bad that pretty well almost everything I have is now needing to be replaced for some reason or another, or at least the last few bags of potting media I have, everything planted in those needs to be repotted. Specifically today, our phragmipedium. So shall I introduce you to Phragmipedium piercii, who I put into this system then. No, I'm sorry, this is when I bought the plant, and I initially had it potted up in a different setup, and I did this one, it had been a year ago. Because 7 months ago I did a follow-up on plants in the PET method that weren't cat setinae, and these had been in that for about 4 or 5 months, so about a year. Now, these ones came from a bag of mulch that wasn't too bad. But what I did with this particular one is I put some peat mulch in it. And why I did that, I don't know. But I've noticed a couple things with this plant. And you're going to think I'm absolutely crazy for repotting this, because we're going to just zoom right on in here. And you can see that this little seedling Phragmipedium is finally flowering for the first time. And say, Julie, why on God's earth pick now to put this plant into a new setup? Well, multiple reasons. Okay, firstly I'd like to say that it's got a pretty good looking root system. It likes this wet dampness that is constantly happening in here. I've run pH tests and things on the wastewater that comes out, and it's getting a bit off on numbers. So that's reason one. Reason two, when I'm watering it now, so what I do is I put my fingers over the hole, I fill it up to right about here, and then I let it drain. And then whatever stays in the reservoir stays, and usually by a week's time everything is dry, reservoir's dry, and the roots here start looking a bit dryish, so rinse, repeat. So after a year of that, it is starting to smell a bit earthy. Now for me, I can't say that that is a bad smell. For me, earthy is a good smell, but that's for plants that grow in cornfields, and maybe not necessarily so good for this plant, even though it is a bit terrestrial. This is Phragmipedium piercii, and obviously it's a frag, so it's from South America. And because my dad was military, we did live in some of the areas that this was native to, and I have seen it growing in the wild, and so I was tickled to get it. And it is making its first bud. I bought it from Nicky's Slippers. Nicky can ship into Western Australia, and he has very healthy plants. So I got this as a seedling in 2021, and it has since grown on quite a bit. and it is putting out this new growth and this new growth so far this year. The other ones, it came with this one, and it's grown these two, so it's doing quite a bit of good growing and budding. But we're going to go to point number 3. So this sits on my headboard in my bedroom, and I was sitting in bed today and I was admiring my bud, and I noticed something squirming down here, and it looked like an earwig, about the size of, I'm going to say, half an inch. But that's 3 strikes, you're out, we're getting a new pot, and if I lose my first bud, I'm okay with that, because we've got a lot of more fans coming. And I don't want to have squirmy, wormy, weird thing living in a pot that resides on my headboard. So we're going to clean it up really good, and we're going to transition into pumice. And this is going to happen to, probably over the next several days and weeks, most of my slipper orchids. So most of my slipper orchids were transitioned to this method at the same time. So they all would have been planted in similar media, but definitely the same bark from one of the bad batches. And since I am noticing that earthy smell coming from several of my frags and paths, and it's been about a year, and this is a pretty damp system, and the little bug in there, we're going to try and put them into inorganic media. So as you can see here, we have pumice in various different sizes, from 0 to 7 millimeters, to 4 to 20, to 7 to 20. I'm not real familiar with pumice and how much moisture it contains, but I have been watching the Orchid Saga and some other YouTubers, as well as Nina at Ninja Orchids. I like the aesthetic of the pumice in the pots. I think that looks real nice, and I think it goes with my aesthetic of the sort of natural organic vibe that I have going on in my living area. As you know, I grow in my home, in my living areas, my bedroom, the living room. So I want it to look pretty, and I don't want it to smell funky. And with all sorts of problems I've been having, even though I do like the way the bark looks, it's getting more expensive. It's becoming lower in quality, which doesn't mean I'm using more of it, so it's becoming even twice as much more expensive. Pumice is inorganic. It won't go acidic on me. That's starting to go acidic. I can reuse it. It's supposed to hold water really good. So yeah, Julie's Orchids has taken the nosedive into inorganic media. Alright, so the trick is now going to be getting this thing out of this pot without making so huge of a mess. Unfortunately, it was watering day today, so I have already tilted the plant over and poured most of the water out. This is my dining room table, so cookie sheet it is to hopefully collect some of the mess. I'm doing this tonight because tomorrow I'm going to do floors. So I'm a bit worried about this because it looks like it has a very nice root system. And I don't know if it'd be stuck to the pot, but it's still pretty damp in here, so I'm hopeful. And yeah, this smells very, very earthy. I feel like I should go grab some tomato seedlings and just put them in this media. I think they might enjoy it. Now, the goal is to reuse this pot because I don't have anything else to put this particular plant into other than this particular pot, so I don't want to damage the pot. And now we're getting to the spag area, and look at little flyy things are coming out of here. So I'm not sure what we've got going on, if it's thrips. Like I said, I saw a little, I'm just going to say, if you guys have ever seen the movie The Wrath of Khan, that bug thing that they put in the guy's ear, it looked like that little tiny thing in my pot. No, that's not going to be sitting on my headboard right above my head waiting for that to crawl. That would give me nightmares. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of pushing on the pot a little bit, hoping to loosen up some of these roots without breaking the pot. But it does seem like I'm getting a bit more of the media to come out. Now I really like these pots. I get them at my local big box store, Bunnings. Can't say that they're necessarily cheap pots. They're 10 bucks AU, $10 some change AU. And you know, if you have to go out and keep replacing a 10-buck pot, that adds up after a while. And don't want to do that right now. So I'm very happy to see that, wow, look at those roots on this thing. This thing is loving this setup. I wish that the media smelt better and I didn't see that horrible looking bug in the pot, but yeah, I saw it. And I initially thought, oh, maybe it was an air bubble, and then it moved again and again and again. And yep, nope, that's not an air bubble. So, because I film on my camera, and this looks like this is going to be a very tedious job of picking between the roots here, as you can see. I think what I'm going to do is get this cleaned up and out of the pot. Get the pot cleaned up. Now, the bottom of the pot has got a layer of rocks, which is where the water reservoir is. Oh, that one's come away from the glass. The plastic, good. Coming. Yep. How about you? Yep. Good. Oh, that's promising. That means my squishing worked. Alright, well, I'll be back. Well, as we can see, we've gotten it out of the pot, I think, pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick through and pick the rocks out and get them cleaned up. Rinse them off with some hydrogen peroxide. I'm going to use these as a top dressing because I've seen different YouTubers that suggest using this, and Orchid Saga does that, and it has a nice look to it. And these are local river rock from, you know, around here in Western Australia, so it kind of works with that as well. Well, these roots are all looking really very good. I'm just going to I'm going to give this a soak to really get these roots to let go of this bark, because like I said, I think it's funky. And I don't want to hurt the roots. And some of it is really stuck on there pretty good. You know, the bits that just fall off when you gently play your fingers through them, that's fine. But if it requires a bit more of a tug at this stage with the upcoming transition into a sharper media, I'd like to err on the side of caution. Ooh. Okay, so we've gotten the pot cleaned up. What was on the bottom gravel cleaned up. We have gotten as much of the bark off this root system as we can, and I'm pretty happy with the shape of this root system. We've got some growing tips And as I was looking earlier, oops, sorry about that. There's a little growing root right there, and right there. And that looks like a new growth altogether. So we've got this new thing growing, this new thing growing. This one is starting to put out roots as well. So it's a good timing for this repot. I'd like to get all of this media off since I'm going to inorganic, and I'd like to get all this off, but these pieces are really, really stuck, and I don't want to damage the root system. I did that with this one here, trying a bit too aggressively to pull one of these pieces off, and I don't want to do that. So the plan is I have 3 different sizes of pumice. We have this very fine, almost sandy-like pumice. And then we have some larger pumice and still larger pumice pieces. So originally when I had this set up in organic media in this way, I had rocks this size filling the water well. The plan is, let's see, not get that root tip, to put the largest pumice into the level of just slightly above the holes there. So that's the plan. Now, sorry about that. One important thing to notice about the pumice is I bought horticultural grade pumice, and I did go ahead and rinse it off to get all the little sandy bits out of it. I have not boiled it because this is horticultural grade and it's made for hydroponics. The supplier told me it didn't need to be boiled or anything, that it just needed to be rinsed off. So that's what I've done. Now I like the look of these, this natural sort of stone look. I really do like it. And I want to go just a little bit above with this bigger. Let some time in. Yeah, I think that's a good height there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a layer of the sandy stuff. And I think this stuff is small enough to go through my drain holes. So this might just eventually over time just drain right out. So I just got a thin layer here. And because I know that this plant is a thirsty little bugger, I am going to be intermingling the different sizes of pumice from here on out, because I want to keep it kind of equally moist. But I think this is a good sort of wickiness from the bottom layer up. I'm going to get a towel. Now one thing I want to consider with this particular plant when I'm putting it in the pot is I'm going to put it pretty well in the middle of the pot, because this plant is growing in multiple directions, and I'm fine with that. So for me, I'm not too fussed with where eventually my name tag is going to go, other than I always put my name tag by the holes, so I know where the holes are at. I'd like this plant a little further down in the pot than what I've got here, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a twist and sort of try to push it down. Now, Phragmipedium roots are pretty tough, and by tough I mean rigid. So I think that's about good right there. And got that level a little bit further down. So now just what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to gently let the larger pumice pieces kind of fall in around, and particularly to fill in any of the bigger gaps that are going on there. And I'm trying to drop these in a little gently because I do realize that this is stone, even though it's pumice and it's lightweight, it's got ragged edges, whereas its prior potting media did not. And I am going to leave the ones touching the sides because A, they were touching the sides to begin with, and B, it'll let me see sort of how the roots are responding after this repot. So I think I've got a nice layer of that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just sort of sprinkle some of this smaller bit of pumice around. I may regret this as I'm not that familiar with the wickingness of pumice. And then now with a layer of the medium size, so tiny, medium, and large. And I can see there's a hole right in here. And really right through here. So I'm just going to kind of give everything a bit of a shake in hopes that some of that pumice falls into the, you can see sort of middle opening there. That did that. Now I'm just going to top it all off with the larger size stones here to cover up all the roots. And these ones, the rhizomes were covered, and a lot of these, particularly this little tiny one here, was just barely poking out. So I'm going to bury it to the same level that it was in, which means I'm going to cover that rhizome completely. And I may need to go clean more pumice. I suppose I could have put that a little bit deeper in the pot. Just the last few bits of decorative rocks on here. Now, these things in the wild, they've been seen to grow vertically on a granite cliff with water just pouring right over it constantly, 24/7. Well, there she is, all potted up. I think it looks good. A little bit of condensation in the pot. I haven't watered it yet, but you can still see that there are roots that we will be able to monitor. Yeah, I really like the way that looks, and we'll see how this goes. We'll do an update on it. So I'd like to thank Nina over at Ninja Orchids, as well as the Orchid Saga, for their tutorial videos that I enjoy watching on inorganic growing, and we'll do some follow-ups on this because, like I said, several more of my slippers are going to go into this system out of necessity. And we'll see how hardy this little guy is. Am I going to lose my bud? Like I said, at this point in time, with the creepy crawly in the pot, I'm willing to risk that. So again, thank you to Ninja Orchids and the Orchid Saga. Thank you to you guys for watching. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. A subscribe would be nice. And everyone have a happy, healthy day. Bye.